welcome to this videocast for subscribers to davidicke.com. Well, it was always coming, and now it is here. The Empire strikes back. And I'm talking, of course, about the hysterical campaign in the media and through politicians to trash any idea of an elite political VIP paedophile ring operating in and around the British establishment and the British Parliament. It was always, like I say, going to come, because the evidence that has been coming out since the exposure of the BBC entertainer Jimmy Savile as a record-breaking paedophile, the information that's come out since then has threatened the very foundations of the British establishment. And as that establishment involves politics, involves royalty, involves the media, etc., etc., British intelligence, then it was always going to wait its time and try to hit back and rubbish these allegations. And so this week we've had a pathetic documentary, it says here, by the Panorama organisation within the BBC, which has sought to trash the idea of a paedophile ring. It will claim it wasn't intended to do that, but that's what it was intended to do. We've had the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Times, on and on and on it goes, coming out with the same stuff. And it is a classic technique of disinformation and diversion that I've come across in many guises for decades. And it works like this. You are faced with evidence that, if believed, is extremely damaging, potentially, in this case, fatal for what you represent. So what you don't do, big no-no, is you don't attack the evidence that's credible. You don't do that because you're on a loser. What you do is you look for what you perceive to be the weakest evidence and the weakest witnesses, and then you target them. Ignore all that. Don't want to go there. No, it's too credible. We'll go there. And then, once you have gone there and claim to have muddied the waters, if you like, then instead of saying, well, their waters there are muddied, is it true? But hold on a second, there's all this other evidence, like something like 30 odd police investigations at the moment into allegations by police officers who have said that their investigations into VIP paedophilia and their rings were crushed and blocked and stopped once they got too close to big names. No, don't go there. They're former police officers. The public might think they're credible. Ignore them. We'll go here. We'll focus on this. And once we've focused on that and put our documentary out, then what we'll do, ignoring all that, is we'll claim, see, it's all a hoax. It was all fantasy. And that's how it works. And there's one other element to it, and that is you personalize it. Because propaganda is never complicated, because complicated propaganda doesn't work, because people go, I don't understand what you're talking about. It's simple, real simple. So here we go. We've muddied the waters here, therefore it's all a hoax. Nice and simple, right? All a hoax, got that? Now let's personalize it so it's all onto one person. So we have headlines galore like this. Watson, this is Tom Watson, who's now the deputy leader of the Labour Party. And for people around the world, Tom Watson was an MP who asked a question in Parliament of the Prime Minister David Cameron about a alleged VIP political paedophile ring operating out of Number 10 under, quote, a previous Prime Minister, talking about Margaret Thatcher. in the 1980s. So now this hoax, it's a witch hunt, is focused on Watson. So you have things like, where is it down the bottom? I can move it. There we go. About the witch finder general and all that stuff. And there's a quote here in this piece which says, do you accept police have no evidence that he, Leon Brittan, Home Secretary rather, in the Thatcher administration, do you accept police have no evidence he was a paedophile? And Watson's answer, that is not my understanding of the situation. And nor is it mine, because I've been investigating this for 2 decades. And I know many other people who've been investigating it. And the same names keep coming up and up and up and up. And among them have been Leon Brittan and the former Prime Minister, Ted Heath. And I find it interesting that this hysterical campaign, not to question some evidence, which is fair enough, but to trash the whole thing, really started to move and motor after Ted Heath was named by police in August. Because as I know from my research going back into the 1990s, Ted Heath opens the gateway to something even deeper and even darker than what has come to light so far. I named him in a book called The Biggest Secret, which was published in 1998, not only as a paedophile, but as a Satanist and child killer. It was read to him, the passage was read to him within days of publication. And in the years that he lived after that, he did nothing. And the reason is, it's true. And once Heath's name came up, a prime minister, and also, as those in the shadows will know, this gateway into Satanism and child sacrifice, never mind just straight murder, had the potential to open up. Suddenly, woo, there's this big trashing campaign going on. And if you go to davidicke.com, if you're not watching this there already, you'll see an interview with Andrea Davison. Andrea is a former British intelligence operative who, in the course of her other work, came across this very paedophile ring and has been investigating it for 25 years. She is currently in exile from Britain, which she fled after being stitched up, not only for a crime she didn't commit, but a crime that never took place as a result of what she was uncovering. She had her house raided by police and 7,000 documents were taken covering her paedophile research. And she says in this interview, and I do recommend it, that she was told in something like March of this year that there was going to be a coordinated campaign between the BBC, or part of it anyway, and national newspapers to trash the whole idea of this paedophile VIP ring, because it was getting out of hand in terms of evidence coming to light. So that is what we're seeing now. And it is so blatant, it's pathetic. And I say this to people involved. I mean, people involved in trying to expose it. And what are called survivors, people who've suffered the abuse, don't give in, because that's what they want. Part of this whole campaign is to say to other people that have evidence about this VIP ring, see, this is what happens if you speak out. Better stay quiet then. So it's blatantly obvious. And we've had this campaign also directed at Extra Row, the investigative journalistic organisation operates on the internet, which has done a great deal in recent times to uncover this ring and to give voice to the voiceless victims of it. Now, is every last syllable of what they say going to be 100% accurate? Of course not. It'll be the first time. What you need to do is look at the constant common themes, the constant common names, the constant common descriptions coming up decade after decade. And it's an amazing coincidence, is it not, that the names that I've come up with, that people have given to me over the last 20 years, the names that were given to Andrea Davison, the names that have come up through the reports on Exaro, they are coming up with the same repeating names, and there are many other examples of that as well. Just a coincidence? How many politicians have passed through Parliament in the last 20, 30 years? And yet, the same names keep coming up. Coincidence? Not a chance. Now, we're also having attacks at the moment on a man called Zac Goldsmith. He's being urged to withdraw his paedophile ring allegations. He's a Conservative MP as opposed to Tom Watson, who's the Labour MP. And this story says Zac Goldsmith told MPs in November that there had been a cover-up of abuse involving establishment figures at the guest house in Richmond, southwest London. And he's now facing questions from a former Conservative MP and the brother of Lord Brittan, the Home Secretary, who's the centre of this hysteria, after he refused to withdraw claims made in Parliament about an alleged paedophile ring in his constituency. Sir Samuel Brittan, the brother of the late former Home Secretary, said it would be helpful if Goldsmith clarified his statements by confirming that Brittan was innocent of all charges. On what basis? When someone's name keeps coming up decade after decade, on what basis? And so this is part of this whole campaign where you take a little and you swipe it across the whole thing and say, it's all a hoax. Oh yeah, he's all innocent. This is the Leon Brittan whose name turned up in government documents after he died, miraculously. This is the Leon Brittan who was Home Secretary when a Conservative MP called Geoffrey Dickens gave him a dossier of alleged political paedophiles, big names, involved in a Westminster paedophile ring. And that document, after being given to Brittan as Home Secretary, went missing. When this came to light in more recent times, and Brittan was asked by the media what happened to this Dickens dossier, his first reaction was, I don't know anything about it. And then when that became untenable, oh yes, there was a bundle of documents and I handed it to, my staff in effect. And I don't know what happened to it after that. Well, you bloody well do. And how interesting that among the 7,000 documents that were taken in the police raid on Andrea Davison's home, part of the Dickens dossier given to her by him was among them. Then there is a newspaper editor called Don Hale, who was a newspaper editor up in Bury in Lancashire. He was approached by a very famous former British government minister called Barbara Castle, and also given information, naming names in relation to this paedophile ring. And let's have a look at the story of what he said. Headline: Editor explains why he didn't publish Barbara Castle's paedophile dossier. Former newspaper editor Don Hale was handed a dossier at some time in the early 1980s about 16 high-profile political figures who appeared sympathetic to the paedophile information exchange, the big paedophile promotion operation. The document was given to Hale, then editor of the Bury Messenger, by the late Barbara Castle, the veteran Labour politician. Once Hale began to investigate the claims made in the dossier, an astonishing operation kicked in to silence the claims. Hale said that he was visited by the Liberal MP for Rochdale, Cyril Smith, notorious paedophile, now well documented, who tried to persuade the journalist that it was all poppycock. Isn't the current media campaign trying to convince the public of the same thing? Do you know I believe it is? Second, Hale said that special branch officers, this is the kind of elite end of the police force in Britain, said special branch officers arrived at the messenger's office, showed him a D notice. This is a law that just can shut you up if you're in the media without you having the ability to say, I've been shut up. It's democracy, see? Freedom. Showed him a D notice and warned him of imprisonment if he failed to hand over the dossier. Obviously, he said, I had to contact certain members named in the dossier and the Home Office for their response. Each call was met with shock horror as to why I should be wasting my time asking these daft questions as nothing was happening within Parliament. Current media campaign? When he said, I explained the detailed nature of the information available and that I couldn't reveal my source, you could almost hear a pin drop as officials were unsure as what to say or do. Then came the special branch visit, he said. And Hale went on, I was sworn to secrecy by special branch at the risk of jail if I repeated any of the allegations. When I met Barbara Castle again, he said, she apologised for the hassle caused and reluctantly admitted that she was fighting a formidable foe. Yes, she was. And it's a formidable foe, as I've been explaining and detailing in my books for decades, that infests every area of society, politics, and media in terms of the current campaign. Absolutely, you'll find it infesting those areas of British life and indeed life in societies all around the country. So now we have this campaign to trash the whole idea of a Westminster political paedophile ring for no other reason than protect the people involved and collectively protect the establishment, the system, from being exposed for the cesspit that it is. And how interesting that we have this campaign to rubbish this whole story and this whole perception. And here's a quote. Actually, she was talking to the Daily Telegraph, another one involved in this campaign to discredit it all. This is Theresa May, Home Secretary now. And this is what she said about paedophilia in Britain in relation to this VIP ring. Child sex abuse allegations made against public figures are just the tip of the iceberg, according to Home Secretary Theresa May, who also claimed that such abuse is woven covertly into the fabric of British society, what I've been saying for 2 decades. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Mrs. May said the public are yet to grasp the full scale of the scandal, which, she said, will lead into our schools and hospitals, our churches, our youth clubs, and many other institutions that should have been places of safety. And you know why they are yet to grasp the full scale? It's because the media have refused to address these things, and they've been forced to by the scale of evidence since the Savile scandal was exposed, and now that same media, much of it, is trying to rubbish those stories so that the public still don't grasp the scale of what's going on. And the victims, the kids now who are being abused and tortured and having their lives destroyed by these same rings today that don't exist according to these morons, they don't matter. Only the system matters. This is what May said. In my discussions with older victims and survivors and their representatives, I began to realize how abuse is woven covertly into the fabric of British society. During one of my first meetings with survivors, one lady said to me, "Get this inquiry right and it will be like a stick of Blackpool rock. You will see abuse going through every level of society." And May said, "I fear she is right. I have said before, and I shall say again, what we have seen so far is only the tip of the iceberg." Why didn't you mention that, Panorama? Why don't you include that in your stories recently? Daily Mail, Daily Telegraph, Times, and all the rest of you. Unfricking believable